Hello and welcome, fellow awesomologist to Awesomology. I'm Sue.
And I'm Ben, and in this episode, we're back with an update on our journey toward total and radical accountability.
Bum-bum! We left our last episode feeling the unique and awesome feeling of knowing we had some next steps to move us forward.
That's right, and one of those steps was a survey for the whole team. So today, we'll talk about the results of that survey and the insights we've gained from them. And now we discuss the insights.
That was a seamless transition.
I'm gonna narrate like every step of this episode.
That's
Buckle
cool.
up.
That's a
Buckle
good
up.
idea.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. He said taking a drink.
Right.
Okay.
Nice. Oh, thanks for
Hey, I gotta jump
couldn't-
in.
Right, I couldn't narrate taking my own drink.
Yeah, I
Right.
gotta have your back. Well, when we debriefed with the team, we asked everyone to look at the anonymized results.
Right.
I anonymized them. Is that a word?
It is now.
And we asked them to think about the things that confirm their worldview, sort of what do you just straight up agree with? Does it just say the same thing that you think? What they disagreed with, and what actions they want to take from there. Now, we never got to the actions part yet
Right.
because we ran out of time, which is maybe a thing that we're doing this week. It's just straight up running
running out of time on
ourselves out of time because we won't shut up.
Yeah.
But we each brought some insights today. So why don't you go ahead and start with all of your cool formatting and numbers and letters.
Great
and
notes. Great notes.
your excellent notes.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, we talked about things that kind of confirmed our view, maybe some things that we disagreed with, right? And I thought that, like as any good survey does, some good and bad was revealed, right? Like we maybe saw some things that confirmed. I guess speaking of my own experience, there were definitely some things that I saw in the beautifully anonymized results that confirmed my feedback, confirmed some things that I was thinking, and then also some good and bad, maybe some things that I wasn't thinking about or weren't part of my feedback. And again, good and bad with all of that. So some good or some things that were kind of confirmed for me was acknowledgement that we really do have a good team, a team that's creative and capable. And, one of the questions, asked that point blank, like, do we feel that everybody on our team has what they need from a creative and capability standpoint? And that was something that we agreed on. And, it almost sounds like offensive to think that the answer might be the opposite to that. Mm-hmm. But also, like, that's a real possibility. That's a total reality that some teams might be facing is, they've got some people that just aren't capable on their team, and we hear feedback, good and bad, on the work that we do, and most of it is positive, and most of it comes with some confirmation that we've got a great team, or I shouldn't say confirmation, but some feedback. Oh, you've got such a great team. You guys do great work. Blah blah blah, right? Which is great to hear, and of course we love that feedback. But for us to confirm it internally, by looking at each other and answering honestly as part of this process, like, do we have a creative and capable team, which is super important for a marketing team, right? So to have like this moment where we can look in the mirror and answer that question with, reality, to kind of confirm some feedback that we've gotten elsewhere. That was really helpful to me because I think I mentioned this when we were debriefing as a team, like there's enough personal insecurity that I have, or, just concern, maybe it's imposter syndrome. I don't know. Where I do wonder from time to time, like, are we really good at what we do? Or is, that just the polite thing for people to say when they see the work that we do? We do have the benefit of having internal and external clients that we get that feedback from enough of a variety of people that I think it is confirmed, like, yeah, we're pretty good at what we do, But like I say, whether it's personal insecurity or imposter syndrome, it's always something that'll probably live with me is, feeling like, am I enough? Are we enough? Whatever. But I was really happy to see some of the answers to the questions that the team showed I don't know how specific we want to get into the exact questions and answers today, but, we were happy to see, I was happy to see that we want more with some things. We gave some answers that showed like, yeah, that's a thing that we're doing and it's at a satisfactory level.
Right.
But we want more, whether we're talking about like one thing in particular was like our the processes that we have in place. There was a question addressing whether or not we have good processes that are, effective in helping us do what we do. And as the leader of the team and somebody that's responsible for putting those processes in place or, empowering the team to develop those processes, be a part of that. I'm always concerned about like, is what we have in place actually working? Is it effective for our team? Is it helping us do what we need to do? And during our strategic planning last year, we talked a lot about some additional processes that we need or some things that we need to revisit, review, simplify, maybe add some detail to. And we haven't gotten to all that yet.
Right.
So like knowing that this is a recent conversation that we had where we've been talking about processes, and to know that we haven't, doing air quotes, fixed all of those things yet. I was a little concerned, like, yeah, man, people are going to respond to this one like, our processes stink. We need more, whatever. But, that one got like a 3.6 out of the 5-point scale. So, not awesome, certainly, but better than a 2,
Yeah.
Which like I was kind of anticipating like 2.5 or less is probably what we'll get on that one.
Really?
And again, maybe personal insecurity, maybe only because I know how it can feel like when you're doing something that, is required of you in your job and the process isn't in place to do that well or to rely on others to pick the ball up and go from there, whatever the thing is. And if like you have an experience with that yesterday and I'm taking this survey today, my answer might be like, our processes suck or they don't exist,
Right.
because I just had this, recent experience. But so sometimes there's recency bias that can affect these answers. So I think I make an internal assumption that we have enough stuff to figure out yet or enough stuff that's messy in the way that we do things that it means people would respond, lower on the scale to that question. But I guess something that we learned is maybe we have more in line than I thought.
Yeah.
And still plenty of room to go, which is nice.
Do you think that we have a different experience with those processes, that by virtue of what we do on a daily basis, you and I, as opposed to the rest of the team, that we see bigger flaws in processes, and maybe because part of what and you even pointed this out to the team, that sometimes we go a whole day not knowing that we accomplish anything, not checking any boxes done. And part of the reason I think that happens to me sometimes is I identify as failed processes, right? So it means either somebody is not interacting well with a process and I have to intervene and try and get things back on track. And so that sucks up a whole bunch of time trying to explain what should be happening. And then, first sucking up a whole bunch of time, me internally arguing about, should I stop and do this thing and try and explain
Right.
to these people, or do I let it go? And you know me, most of the time I don't let it go.
Yeah. Right.
But I think that the rest of the team offered plenty of feedback that there are things that need to get brushed up, right? And that there's willingness to clean up those processes. But I think we just have a different view of what they are and feel like they're not working.
Right.
Because we're dealing with what feels like is a process not working.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I think the answer is definitely yes. I'm sure that our perspective or vantage point has to do with how these feelings or the truth might differ related to processes and stuff like that. And I think that it's important to recognize that because there's probably things that our team members are doing every single day right within a process that we've put together that isn't awesome, but that's the process. That's the way we do things. That's the air quotes best way because it's the process that we've decided and agreed on. But one thing that, one of the last questions that you asked as part of the debrief was, does the survey results inspire any change, ideas for change or anything? And this isn't necessarily an idea for change, but a confirmation that it's super important for the people in the day-to-day to look at what they're doing, to look at those processes that we have in place that, we've agreed on, many of which are in writing, some not quite yet. And scrutinize, and ask, like, is this the best way to do this thing? Or there's this part of the process that's a pain every time I get to it, maybe just a teeny tiny pain, little pinprick, but I move on right away. Or maybe something really painful that every time I do it, I go, ugh,
Yeah.
And like, you got to let us know when that stuff happens, because it might just be as simple as us saying, well, like, don't do that thing anymore. And they feel like they have to, or there's a tool that we're utilizing that all you got to do is check a box to activate something that means that pain can go away,
Right.
whatever. So I think that that's an important bit of feedback from this whole process, is to make sure that we're always looking for those opportunities, but also like saying something when you identify it, and maybe the best time to identify it is when you feel that pain, right?
Right.
That little micro moment of pain, or maybe big pain. But then the flip side of that too, not always get stuck on like when things don't go well or when things are painful, but here's this part of this process that's working really, really well, and how do we like replicate that or bring that into other processes that we have? Because I think there's plenty that goes really, really well. And we could, maybe use some of the structure behind that, or the tools that we use for that process to go well, to mimic or implement into other things to just make us more efficient and
Right.
happy and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, while you were talking and I was listening to you and I was very engaged in what you were saying, I also made a note because the thing that this brings up for me is, am I shoring up processes in a way that is so that it's keeping the pain points away from people, right?
Yeah.
So I am spending the time fixing a process.
pain?
Yeah, I'm spending the time in pain, and because I know that one of my a blessing and a curse of working with me is I have a tendency to be a little bit of a helicopter, and where I will swoop in and be like, oh, that's broken. I have to fix that right now. And now that's not great for my workload, but I still do it. And if I am swooping in and trying to fix things rather than letting other people fix things, or saying, every time we come down this road, I have to jump in and fix that. So the process is broken, because we're not going to add into the procedure, like Sue sends an email to this other person who doesn't do the thing that they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a process.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I made myself a note. Am I shoring up processes to look for that and try and fix it if that's what I'm doing?
Yeah, and fix it might be you doing something, might be fixing the process. It might be the person involved in the process learning a thing, right? Because I think that that's something that we leaders, the heroes wearing the cape, can definitely do from time to time, is when it gets to that point of like, can't figure this thing out, or here's this roadblock in the process, whatever, we just swoop on in. Do it, and not do it like in secret or anything. Maybe the team's totally aware, like, oh, this is just when Sue comes in and fixes this thing or does this part of it, and then I can carry on from there.
Right.
Instead of that, what do they need to learn to be able to do the thing that requires a cape?
Right.
Which also most of the time doesn't require a cape.
Is it? So it doesn't require the cape. Is it weird that I'm wearing the cape?
I mean, only a little bit, but it is Tuesday. It's
It's
cape day.
cape day.
It's cape day here, so
Taco cape day.
right. Tacos and capes. I like it.
Yeah, I think I also wonder how much people care about processes. You know, I think we try and look as leaders at the grand scheme of things. We try and look at the 10,000-foot view and see what those processes are and make sure that they're efficient. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about it. And it's just freshly occurring to me as we're sitting here talking that when we talk to people who aren't looking for them, do they even care? Or like, is it just as long as the process to get me the work that I have to do, to get me rid of the work I have to do, and to get me paid are all working, then we're cool. You guys do whatever you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, who knows what's going on in everyone's head and how they feel about processes, whether it's developing them or abiding by them, interacting with them, using them. As someone who has grown in my respect for and like awareness of what a healthy process even is, or how necessary they are to highly functioning teams and organizations. I mean, I can say that like until you don't need them till you need them.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think at the end of the day, there's no arguing that like healthy teams, highly functioning organizations have healthy processes in place.
Yeah.
There's just no debating that. It's
Right.
just, it's really that simple. Could you process a team or a person to death? Sure. You know, we don't need a process for going to the restroom. Maybe I kind of have to go right now. Maybe we do. Shoot.
Do we see now? Well, the answer is no.
Right.
Well,
The answer is no.
The thing about processes, and I don't know if I've mentioned that on this episode of the podcast, but I am a Green Belt certified lean process improver. Anyway,
You're batting 1,000.
it hasn't come up yet, so I'm glad I got to mention it. Anyway, the thing about process is that there is a process for everything. Everything we do has a process. There's a process for you to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to explore that any further. But it is about what. So I think what you can do, you don't process people to death because everything has a process.
Sure.
You process improve and you micromanage the process and you overthink the process. It has to exist. Everything you do has a process.
Yeah.
And it's whether you just
Like in what form does it exist, right?
Right.
Like you don't need a written process for the restroom.
right.
But there are several processes that you do. And I think that that's where, that's where like my awareness of utilization of respect for processes has definitely grown over the years,
Yeah.
because I think there was a time where I was much more comfortable with like the unwritten handshake agreement sort of process, right? Like this is the way it works and we all know this is the way it works. So like, we don't have to talk about it. We don't have to write it down. You know what I do. I know what you do, you know, whatever, you know, and that doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Especially when it comes to critical functions. Sorry.
Right. I think, the more people you have and the more you're trying to do, the less likely that is to work.
Right. Yeah.
So if things are relatively low stakes and you have hardly any people,
Right.
which I don't know what job that is
Yeah.
like that, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, coming from the self-employed, I mean, I'm sure that that's where, like, how my brain was wired, you know, is, you know, it was always a relatively small team. I mean, at one point in time, it was a 2 or 3 person team. And, you know, we did just kind of all know what everybody was responsible for. And if something came up because we didn't have it documented or whatever, it was really easy for us to just talk about it and say, hey, are you doing this thing or am I doing this thing? You know,
Yeah.
or are you doing this or that or whatever? But so that, like, I think, mom and pop, solo duo entrepreneur type scenarios is where it might be a bit more possible just because you're that dynamic, like you said, a smaller team. but even then, like, what happens when things change, or what happens when that person's gone, or you have to hire someone, or
Right.
all of a sudden you're a 6-person team and not a 3-person team. And in small businesses like that, that growth can happen really, really quick. Maybe not overnight, but maybe within a few days, a few weeks, a month, a year, whatever. And, that can be super taxing to a person. you know.
Right, right. Well, and you need, to your point, you need some redundancy.
Yeah.
You need to be able to pull back and look at the success of the group and know that if you pluck yourself out of that group, the group keeps moving.
Right. Right.
And you don't get that without some processes in mind. And I think, I've definitely been on teams where rather than having a process or some, redundancy in regards to tasks or, backups, those kinds of things, what that team had, and this is a sick team, what that team had was a process to blame other people when things didn't get done. And that was how we dealt with not having redundancy. And that takes zero awareness of what's happening. If what you're willing to do is, oh, that person's sick today, well, they suck because now we can't do this thing and they're so stupid they should have been here. And I don't know, well, there's nothing I can do for you because that person should have been here. Like that's toxic.
Yeah. Sounds fun.
Doesn't it though? Yeah.
So we've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole on processes, but an important part of our conversation yesterday for sure. And
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm going to shift gears and talk about another. Yep, there it goes. A hard shift. I messed up the clutch. My bad.
If you can't find them, grind them, Ben.
Something that we talked about that was, I think, one of the tougher parts of the survey and our conversation around it was the whole topic around whether or not we're meeting expectations. Sorry. I'm
You're
getting
choking
emotional.
on it.
Getting
So
emotional.
bad.
I mean, I think just for what it's worth, something to put out there right away is I think this is one of the more valuable parts of this whole process because we have to have real conversations about some stuff that's really tough to say. Right?
As evidenced by what a hard time you're having saying it.
Gosh, I'm sorry. So yeah, I honestly don't even remember what my what my answer was to that survey question as I'm sitting here and thinking about it now. But each of us had kind of there were some similarities and some differences in people's response to that question. But the fact that we had to sit around, in the same room and look at each other and talk about why we answered the way we did and hear from each other, that's one of those moments in this process that is right in line with dealing with real issues.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting you bring this up because I think you and I we have opposite perspectives on this. Where I think it sounds like that was sort of convicting to you to feel like not everyone feels expectations are being met or that everyone is necessarily contributing to meeting those expectations. I'm sort of on the opposite side because what I heard in that conversation was a lot of, but sometimes that just happens. A lot of forgiveness for it. And my instinct was to push that harder and say, let's not back down from that. It's not comfortable to talk about, but let's not make excuses for ourselves or for each other, And if the reason you're not meeting an expectation is because you don't want to, for example, then let's say it. Or if I think, and let's apply that even more broadly. If I need to look you in the eye, Ben, and say, I think you don't do that because you don't want to do it, then let's do that. And be comfortable with the idea that I'm saying that because that is what's in my head. It's not that I think you're a bad person, right? So let's hash that out and be able to move forward instead of, well, sometimes those things just don't happen, and not everybody's not perfect, and it's okay to not be perfect and not always meet expectations.
Yeah.
That's a thing that has really that has clung to my brain. That idea of, but it's fine.
Yeah. I feel like we got into the meat of this conversation when we were talking about the team, right? And whether or not a team can be successful if someone's not meeting their expectations, right? So I mean, what you're talking about, I think, is definitely something that, if someone's just straight up not meeting expectations, that does need to be brought into the light. And something that we've talked about as part of this process is the reasons for somebody not meeting their, they don't want to do it. They don't know how to do it. They didn't know they had to do it, right? Maybe those are the three. Maybe there's one that I'm missing. So having those real conversations is something that we're maybe just scratching the surface on by doing some of the stuff that we've been doing recently. But I'm curious, super excited, a little afraid of what it's going to look like when we have to have that conversation where, using the example you just gave, where you come to me and say, I don't think you want to do that. How do we do that? How do we have those conversations where you've got all the trust from me, where I can take that, I can receive that from you, not take it like I'm taking crap from you or anything like that, but I can receive that from you and then tell you the truth, my truth, or and then have the conversation to get to what the reality is and then move forward, because in your brain you might think you don't want to do that thing, and in my brain might be, I don't know I'm supposed to do that thing, or I don't know how. I'm doing my best with what I have, but I don't know how to do the thing that you think I don't want to do. I want to do it, but I just don't know how. I'm doing what I think I should do.
Yeah, doing my best.
Yeah.
But it seems utopian to be able to have those kinds of really honest conversations. And it really is the thing that attracted me to this whole process.
Yeah.
To be able to, because I do the same thing. I've definitely been guilty of the same thing that I think we heard as we were debriefing, which is, I know that sometimes you don't, and it's fine, and all of that stuff is fine, and one of the things that I had to rewire my own brain when I was doing organizational training and coaching, and tried to rewire other people's brains, was to be able to sit in silence and not make the excuses for the person, for example, that you're coaching. So I had experience with more than one supervisor who would turn to their, would say to their, they would say, I can't figure out why I can't coach this person out of whatever this bad habit is, right? They keep doing the same thing over and over again. And if I would ask, can I be in the coaching? Can I hear how you approach it? I would go into the coaching and they would say, we talked about this thing, whatever this thing is that is your bad habit last time. And I know it could be this, and it could be that, and it could be this other thing. And maybe you feel this way. And the employee would sit and listen to the litany of things that they could possibly respond with that they know the boss would accept.
Sure.
And pick one.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. It was that thing there. That's why that's why I did that.
Yeah.
So in that way, you have offered that person the excuse. You have plenty of good reasons for not doing this thing, but just remember to do it next time. So thinking about being able to live in an environment where you can say to me, did you not know you had to do that thing? And I can go, yeah, I knew I had to do that thing, but I hate it.
Yeah.
And then we can have that conversation. Sounds great. It does.
Yeah.
I mean, and also you and I have that conversation already, and you're very good at it.
Oh, I'm glad you feel that way. Because I'm always concerned with. I mean, the example you just gave is absolutely perfect. Like, did you not know you had to do that thing? Do you not know how to do that thing? And the response is some form of, "Yep," and I hate it. You know, because sometimes the thing you hate to do is also something that's really necessary.
Right.
You know, for the client, for the organization, whatever. So, like, how do you navigate the rest of that conversation then to talk about what's next? And for me, it's always, you know, I want to get to solutions as quickly as possible, or the next iteration of the solution. Like, well, let's try this then. Maybe that'll make you hate it less, or maybe that'll make that less painful. Maybe that'll make that thing go away altogether. Right. But what can happen there, the pitfall can be you just move on to the next solution or the next attempt, iteration, and you forget to talk about, like, why do you hate it?
Right.
Why do you hate it? What about it makes you hate it? Or what about what you do, who you are, makes you hate it? Because it's a thing that happens every day in the world, and some people do it really, really well, so they must like it.
Yeah.
Is it something that they have that you don't? A tool, a resource, maybe a skill? Or is it something that they don't have, like a conscience? I don't know. I don't know. Depending on what the thing is that we're talking about that you might hate, you know? But.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, and that's exactly. I'm feeling the urge to reframe who I am as a human being right here. I don't think I have definitely expressed to you, I know I have to do this thing. It is
One of my least favorite things to do.
one of my least favorite things to do. I am dreading the thing.
Yeah.
So I have never, see, I'm just making excuses for myself. I have never straight up said, I'm not going to do my job
Yeah.
to you.
Right.
But we have had similar conversations, and exactly what you're pointing out, which is, well, let's talk about why you hate that thing. Because I think it's it's really tempting as a leader to say, well, whether you hate it or not, it has to happen.
Yeah.
So,
Or, okay, I'll just do that thing for you then.
right. So good job. Thumbs up to you, brother.
This is a really cool moment that I'm just going to soak up right
Yeah.
now. The fact that I handle that thing at least
Yeah.
halfway well.
I like to think that me being the difficult person I am makes you grow so much.
There is truth.
This is my gift
yeah.
to you.
Thank you, Sue, so much. No,
Such a pain in my butt.
no, I mean, like, so yeah, I mean, yes, like the answer, or like, this is totally true. Like, the difficult conversations that we have, I've certainly grown because of it. I hope you have too, you know, and like, I much rather have it that way than complacency, I guess, is the other option, or
Yeah.
ignorance. I don't know. So,
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, I mean that in the most genuine way. Like, I know I've grown because of some of the conversations that we've had to have, and
Right.
I appreciate that totally.
Yeah. Well, and you know, this is not praise Ben Bauer time, but I think what you react well to is you started out our relationship first of all, on the idea that I am competent, capable, and creative. We started out with that. There was none of this like, I'm the young new guy and you have to prove yourself to me. I always felt that you felt that about me. And what I was able to express to you was basically, and I try not to be like a resistant jerk about it, but this feeling of like, in the industry we work in, there's just a lot that I already know. So we don't have to we don't have to play this game where you, like, especially when you started, where you as a guy coming in learning what the credit union industry is, where you tell me how it works. We don't have to do that.
Yeah.
None of that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And you can trust that if I have an opinion on something that I think will make things better, that I'll fight for that opinion. And I think helped. I really, this is me coming around to this idea of like, I think that you and I have a really good history of dealing with real issues. And it was this thing, maybe it was this thing we kept literally behind closed doors, where we would have real conversations, but there was some part of that where we never really, until we started working through this stuff, never really turned it outward to be like, well, we can do this.
Right.
This is the thing we do all the time.
Yeah.
And I feel comfortable bringing up a real issue to you. You feel comfortable either disagreeing, working through, whatever the appropriate response is. And we, I think, like each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most of the time.
Not always.
No, we do like each other, Sue, or at least I like you. I won't speak for you, but
Okay, good. See that you don't.
yeah. But no, I think you're totally right, and yeah, it's interesting to kind of reflect back on that and to think about how, yeah, maybe this is something that you and I have been doing, and maybe just hasn't been a gift. And not to say that we've been doing it perfectly or anything like that, but it's a gift that maybe we haven't shared with the whole team in a subconscious way to protect them from something,
Right.
conflict, I suppose.
Right.
When really, maybe we were hurting by not letting them see it or participate in it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, there's this, maybe it was a perception, and we've gone way, I know, we got to get back on track, but there maybe is this perception because I'm the most tenured member of the team. And being the most tenured member of the team, I'm like that, that retiring cop who's too old for this crap kind of person, where I'm like, no, we don't need to, let's dispense with all of that and let's just deal with what's reality. And I've never been political about things. I've never been, God knows I've never tried to do the right thing to save my own reputation. But I think there's a chance that the rest of the team's perception could be like, well, she just can do that because of her experience, of her personality, like
Her title.
like she's uniquely positioned to do that. And
Yeah.
I can't do that. I can't step into my power
Yeah.
in the way she can. Which is a myth.
Yeah. It's not
Is an
true.
absolute myth.
Right.
Especially, also they should know well enough to know that there's some significant portion of what I say is not bluster, but it is me pushing myself forward and saying, this is what I believe. I am going to be confident in it. And I'm going to do this because I believe it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. Whether or not it's the technically correct thing,
Sure.
sometimes it's up for debate.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. But you won't know that answer unless you try.
Right.
So.
Okay. Enough of the mutual love hour. Let's move on.
Yeah. No, all good talk though, and something that I think we need to continue to remind ourselves of throughout this process is to invite people into the real conversations and to
Right.
see the benefit of it,
Yeah.
So I feel like we're maybe getting to the point of wrapping up. I feel like there's some more insights
Right.
though.
Yeah.
I mean, I know one thing that I mentioned earlier was, some ideas for things that I like to change. And I mentioned like not settling for painful processes and stuff. And that's something that every member of the team is responsible for, like speaking up when like something doesn't seem right or they see an opportunity for improvement, so like that's definitely one thing that I took away from this part of the process. And then like looking internally too, like some things that I know I need to do more of, get better at, whatever, is to be disciplined in doing the stuff that I say I'm going to do. I think that sometimes I attach like whether or not I'm meeting expectations on the team with like the delivery of things that I say I'm going to do, that most of the time when I think I come up short on those things are some of the things that maybe like live in the background, like having a conversation with somebody outside of our team, or doing a thing that isn't like attached to a project that has a checkbox and, okay, that project is done now. Researching a thing or getting permission or asking for budget. I don't know. I'm trying to do my best to remember all of the things that I've failed on in the last 7 years. But so like, part of that is maybe just a personal awareness of, hey, like you've said you've said that you would do some stuff, you didn't do it. So like, one, be aware. And again, a survey like this is an opportunity to kind of recognize some of that stuff. But then also like, what are you going to do about it? Like, what do you need to change a practice that you have, a system that you're utilizing to, like, like some of this stuff that I say I'm going to do, do I need to make it a project in our project management software and have the checkbox and the due date, and so I say that because that's one thing that I think I can do to help just deliver more on the commitments that I'm making, And then along with that, as I'm talking on the negative side of like things that I'm failing on and haven't done, celebrating the stuff that we do, I mean, that's something that we probably, so let's talk about celebrating a celebration, because we probably celebrate more than we think we do. Like, hey, good job, person A, on that thing that you just did, or good job, team, on that thing that we did. But also, like, can you celebrate too much? Like, as long as it's real and it's like something to celebrate. Like, I don't want to make it sound like certain things are worth celebrating and others aren't. Like, everybody's job, everybody's role on this team, on this planet, is worth celebrating every single day. But also, we don't have time to party all the time.
Says you.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. That party budget's going up next year. But yeah, all this to say, like, I think that's an opportunity that we always have, is to like take that pause, take that moment to celebrate, not just to make people feel appreciated, but like to really like create that moment where we can recognize like, hey team, we're doing stuff.
Yeah.
To get out of the day-to-day a little bit.
So let's talk about that in terms of accountability.
Yeah.
Right? In terms of having an accountable team. Because what I am hearing from you is, as the leader of a team, you feel like it's your job to encourage more celebration. Mm-hmm. How can we take that idea and stop making you the person accountable for it and make the whole team accountable for it instead? Because that's part of that is, and also I think aligns with a discussion we started to have the meeting after the meeting yesterday that you and I had, of how much of this is them waiting for us to offer permission, to tell them what to do, to give them something to follow. Mm-hmm. And if that's what's happening, how can we start to shift that dynamic? So how can we encourage in a genuine way?
Right. That's exactly where I was going to go. I think that that's my biggest concern with it, is by encouraging it, or, doing anything in a way where it doesn't feel genuine, is like the last thing that we want, right? Is like making it a requirement that everybody celebrates some other person on the team every week. Like, ugh, gross, right? But like, how can we model it? How can we make it clear that it is an expectation of our team to celebrate, like to take the pause and celebrate, like, so, I mean, I suppose like many things, it starts by, doing it ourselves and leading by example. But with something like, I mean, using like celebrations as the topic at the moment, it's maybe a little more tricky one because the concern about it being genuine is really high. You know, if we're talking about a process like do it or don't do it, thing works or thing doesn't, like it's pretty simple. You make a process, you make it a rule, like this is a thing that you're accountable for or
Right.
we're accountable for now. With celebrations, like we can't just prescribe that or write a policy, you know, otherwise it's just going to be super fake, you know. So great question. I don't really have I don't have an answer. I think anytime you're talking about like cultural stuff like that, it's a little less, it's one of those intangible things that, you know, are practiced and displayed and examples given, leadership is shown. And then, you know, I was kind of kidding about like celebrating the celebration, but then like when we get to the point where we can recognize and maybe measure like, hey, we are actually like, we're celebrating more stuff now, like people are happier and, you know, people understand the value that they're bringing to the team because we're celebrating. We have to celebrate that,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And share that good news and hopefully share with other people how you can make that happen.
Yeah.
Because I think it's one of those buzzy kind of things that people say, oh, well, people want you to celebrate. But so much of that leadership stuff, traditional leadership, comes back to, so find a way to make your people celebrate. And that is now your problem too.
Right. Yeah.
Instead of bring the team together to be accountable to celebrate everyday things.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned like how we tie this to accountability and thinking of things that we should celebrate, especially in a process like this where we're pushing ourselves as a team and maybe creating some uncomfortable moments. We need to celebrate when we're growing on this journey and when people are
Right.
taking accountability and you know, owning the decisions that we've agreed that they own, you know, and like, I mean, yeah. So it's really easy to think about celebrating a project being completed or an award that we won or something like that. And those are important to celebrate, and definitely important moments to celebrate. But hey, this thing that has been a struggle for you to really own this part of your role for one reason or another, you're doing it now. Like, we got to celebrate that stuff for
Right.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So as you can see, I'm continuing to make notes.
You're so good at note taking.
Oh my gosh, I'm so great at it. Can we celebrate that?
Yeah.
So final thing that I want to talk about, because I ruminated about our meeting after the meeting yesterday. And one of the things I brought up to you in that meeting was this, my core feeling that even as we're trying to work through getting the whole team to be accountable to each other and explain how that means, explain what that means and how that is, you know, people taking ownership of what they're doing. We're still doing this with a team who were brought up in a traditional leadership style,
Yeah.
which is we tell you what to do,
Yeah.
and you do it.
Yeah.
And by doing the thing we tell you, you are you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And so when you shift that dynamic to the team builds this accountability together, and you, as any part of the team, are responsible to understand what that accountability is, be, you know, having the shared fate, all of that stuff is a huge shift. And so the thing that I brought up to you yesterday was like that I was frustrated because it just still feels like they're saying like, well, just if you could just tell us what to do about this, then we would do it, and then you wouldn't get so frustrated in these meetings, Sue, because we know you want something and you're not communicating it. So what I started to think, and you said, you know, there are people that want to be led, and the question I have to that after thinking about it is, do they want to be led, or do they want to be right? So if the purpose is to be led, then it doesn't work. But if all they want is to do the right thing, then that works. That works in this dynamic. We just have to get them to understand that the right thing is accountability, not being led. Does that make sense? Does that resonate with you as a thought?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it like identifies the real challenge with all of this, which is like sometimes we don't know if we're right until after.
Right.
And by you wanting to be led, or I guess I'm not sure if I'm talking about wanting to be led or wanting to be right now, but by you wanting one of those things and then we come to find that we were wrong, that gives you an opportunity to not be accountable for what you do, or to say, well, I did that thing that way because that's what you told me to do.
Right.
And so now I feel no ownership in the results.
Exactly.
That's where the problem comes,
Yeah.
So I think I have to believe maybe part of this journey or this process will teach me otherwise. But I have to believe that there is a way where people can take leadership, can take orders, instruction, whatever, do a thing, come to realize it was wrong, and feel accountability for the role that they played in it.
Mm-hmm.
What that looks like, how we get there, where there's, because at the end of the day, what we're talking about, I think as I understand it, is shared fate, right?
Right.
So how we get there, how we get to that shared fate thing
Yeah.
is, I guess, to be determined,
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. Even as we work through this, one of the things that reminds me is that there will always be orders, quote unquote,
right.
orders.
Yeah.
There will always be things that are, first of all, we work in a service industry.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole system is set up for us to take orders.
Right.
Those are the orders we take.
Yeah.
Processes are orders.
Right.
And it is creating accountability even alongside those other things that I think is the fun and unique challenge.
Yeah.
Because there is no space that we go orderless.
Right.
That's chaos.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
Right. And there is a space where there are orders and there isn't accountability,
Right.
and that creates failure or a non-accountable team,
Right.
an unshared fate.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I feel like I'm leaving this like a cliffhanger or something, but it is kind of where we're at, right?
We're actually living in a cliffhanger, so I think that's totally appropriate. So let's talk about what's next.
Okay, let's do it.
So the one thing I know for sure is we still have to have a conversation because we ran out of time, as I mentioned, about what things other people want to change for themselves and to help the team change.
Yeah.
So those action steps are a little TBD,
Yep.
but I wrote a lot of notes during this conversation too. The more we talk about it, the more I think you and I discover things,
Right.
and it's helpful.
Yep.
So
And it's something we got to bring the team into.
yeah,
Because like I totally agree. Like the more that we talk about it, like action steps are popping up. I hate to get to solutions. I hate to think that we're developing solutions right now, but steps to a solution or steps to accountability,
Right.
I think are the things that we're developing or are popping up in our heads right now. And as we know, that can't just be on you and me. So
right.
we have to invite the team into that.
Yeah. So that's next steps. We're going to have that conversation yet this week. We're going to see what those are. We can report back next time on what those action steps ended up being.
Yeah.
I think, sitting here right now, thinking about what action steps could come from this, it's a little bit daunting because I also know what our list of other things that are unrelated to this that have action steps
Yeah.
from planning and things like that are.
Right.
So I think the focus needs to be on how we create action steps that we can be doing concurrently
Right.
with other things.
Yeah.
And it's especially useful if they're around process, because we got to do the process.
Yeah. 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 Well, whatever they will be, and we'll share.
Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. Well, we appreciate you joining us on this journey. Keep coming back to hear more. And if you're interested in any of the materials we've put together, like the survey we just took,
Yeah.
or the questions that we used to debrief it, let us know. You can follow us on social media, or you can get in touch with us at our website, exclamationqso.com.
Yeah. And I'll just add a little plug, like, get in touch with us. Like if
Please.
someone is listening to this and you're feeling some of the same stuff that we're feeling, or if we're even talking about something similar, let's talk, because my guess is we can probably learn something from each other. So don't hesitate to reach out, good or bad. We'd love to hear it. But also, we'd really like to hear the good stuff.
Yeah, please.
Awesome. Thanks, Sue. Thanks, friends, for tuning in. Be awesome, and we will see you next time.
The Awesomology Podcast is a production of Exclamation Services. Thanks to Nick Mulliver for sound production and Kylie Ganther for our cover artwork.
Executive producers are me, Ben Bauer, and my friend Suzanne Campbell.